The name of the service.
The time is 5:30, and we are here Tuesday, July 24th, the city of Coppell for the city council meeting. And a quorum is present, so I will call the meeting to order, and we will move into executive session. We just adjourned from executive session at 7:10, so please join us in the back for work session. We are going to do these out of order, just for those of you who are here. We're going to do B, C, and then A. Sorry. Okay, the time is 7:40, and we will move into regular session. Today we have Brandon Jones. You are right there, who is the assistant chaplain and Coppell firefighter, to lead us in the invocation. And then please remain standing, and we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
Heavenly Father, we thank you today. First off, how thankful and blessed we are to be in this country with the freedoms and the rights that we have, dear Lord. And we thank you for this state that we live in, and we thank you for this city. Whether we work here or whether we live here, we're blessed to be here, dear Lord. And we just thank you for this leadership group and the decisions they've made to create a culture in this city of compassion and care for one another and progressiveness. And we just ask tonight that you give clear minds to any decisions that are made, and that they can continue to progress forward with this, dear Lord, and continue to make Coppell a wonderful place for us to live and work. And we thank you for all the blessings you give us, Heavenly Father. No matter how many times we fail you, dear Lord, you still love us no matter what. And no matter how far away we feel we are from you, dear Lord, we always realize that you're actually right there with us. And just give us decisions tonight that will honor you and honor the city. And we thank you most of all for sending your Son to give his life for us, dear Heavenly Father. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Thank you very much. Okay, item 6, we have Sandy Lancaster from DFW Airport, Environmental Program Manager on the construction activity of DFW Airport. Well, welcome.
Mayor Hunt, members of council, I probably look nothing like Sandy Lancaster, but she is right behind me. I just didn't want to miss this opportunity to say hi and to just open up this presentation. My name is Chad McCuffsky. I'm the Executive Vice President of Operations at DFW Airport. I work very closely with this team, the small but mighty team, to make sure that we are good stewards and good neighbors, most importantly, especially to our host cities. And so that's why we're here tonight, is to share a little bit of an update as to what we're working on and where we're heading and how it might impact you and the residents of Coppell. So we'll start with the first slide. This is a slide I think you've seen from the last time we were here. So I thought instead of talking about these dot points, I'd just share a couple of anecdotes. One is in 2017, DFW Airport had served roughly 67 million passengers, and that's a little over a 3% increase from the year prior. What's really interesting, though, is that while we served more passengers, we did it with fewer takeoffs and landings, fewer aircraft. It was actually about a 2.5% decrease in takeoffs and landings year over year. So you're probably wondering why. Maybe you've actually felt that if you've traveled. The planes are fuller. The airlines are getting more sophisticated as to how they book flights. But they're also upgauging aircraft as well, so they're flying some larger aircraft than they were before, and so that kind of explains some of that activity. So we had just finished up the TRIP program, our Terminal Renewal and Infrastructure Improvement Program, and as a result of that, we are now starting to look at our horizontal assets, much like I'm sure many of the cities do. You look at your streets, your utilities, all the things that make cities work. DFW is a city unto itself, I like to say, and so it's time for us to really look at all of our horizontal infrastructure at DFW Airport. The airport was built in the 70s, and as much of that, those assets are now coming on 40 and then 50 years old, and so it's time for us to look at renewal. A couple of fun facts here I think is pretty interesting. We have over 1,288 lane miles of roadway at DFW Airport. That is literally the distance of traveling from our airport to San Diego nonstop. If you look at the cumulative road lane miles that we have on the airport. So it's a pretty 1.1 million linear feet of sanitary sewers. We have a lot of work ahead of us in terms of infrastructure enhancements. We're going to go about that over the next 10 years. And so we started that work with runway rehabilitation. We're not much of an airport without runways. And so we are starting with runway 17 center, 35 center. That's the one listed in 1 on the graphic on the screen. That is one of our 2 primary arrival runways to the airport. In May of this year, we took this runway down, portion of the runway down for reconstruction. And the reason we're here today is because we're going to talk a little bit about the full closure that's going to be necessary to completely reconstruct that runway. Roughly 40% of our arrivals to DFW Airport come on that runway. But as you can see, we're starting to prioritize improvements that we'll be making to other runways as well. And I expect the next runway we'll likely address is going to be our other primary arrival runway, which will be on the West Complex, and we'll be doing that in the next couple of years. And so I'd like to, at this point in time, turn it over to Sandy Lancaster to talk to you a little bit about what we've been seeing with the partial closure and then give you a little bit of a sense as to what to expect on the full closure. Sandy?
Thank you, Chad, and good evening. We're delighted to be here. It's good to see you all again. This slide's just real quick about our noise program. I know you're all familiar with that, but we monitor noise in flight tracks and talk to the communities a lot. So we're always here, always a resource, and particularly during the runway closures and such, we actively monitor what's going on our airfield so we understand where aircraft are shifting. Because obviously if you close a runway, then air traffic has to shift to other runways. Even during the partial closure, we've seen a shift. So we'll talk about that as well. Just a real quick snapshot of flight tracks and where we were at last year with total complaints. So we had about 817 complaints Metroplex-wide, of which Coppell brought in about 59 complaints. So about 7.2% of our total complaints. And we like to break it down into what are the sources so we understand what are the things about our airport that people are sensitive to, and then we factor that into our decision making as we're going forward because we understand those sensitivities. So this is a little bit more about the partial closure. It started on May 24th and it goes through August 3rd. So we got about 10 more days left of this partial closure. So aircraft are actually able to land over the top of that construction area during this partial closure. The runway is only able to take just a limited number of landings because of that closure. And then beginning August 3rd, we'll shift to a full closure that'll run through about November 16th, and then there'll be some ongoing night closures until about December 8th. And this is all to rehabilitate the pavement that's worn out. We did kind of a unique thing. We're doing an asphalt overlay It's kind of a pilot project for the airport, but it enabled us to be able to complete this work much more quickly. We have found that this is a good technology where it's an overlay over the concrete. So then maintenance is a lot easier because you can go in and mill out that asphalt. So we think this is kind of our test case, but we're very positive about how this is going to work out. And then the phasing was done to minimize impacts not only to our airfield, but also to our communities. So to let you know a little bit about how those change in ops came about, I know this graphic's probably a little hard to see, but where 17 Center took most of our arrivals when it's open, takes about 40%, as Chad said. A lot of that traffic has shifted over to 17 left, and then subsequently over the city of Coppell when the winds are out of the south, because aircraft land into the wind. Today the winds are out of the north, so no flights over Coppell from the landings today. But a good news story is the west diagonal on the 1-3 right. The FAA's been very limited in how they could use that runway because of some restrictive rules. But during this closure, they found some very creative ways to shift traffic over to the west side of the airfield. So that's more evenly distributed, the traffic. So we understand there's still a lot of flights over Coppell, but the good news story is many of those shifted over to the west side through a lot of creativity. The little graph there shows kind of the change in percent use of a runway from a number of ops perspective. And 17 left is the runway that affects Coppell primarily. And that has increased. The operations have about doubled. So where normally the runway would take about 150 operations, it's running at more like 300 or so. I'm sorry? I said the runway typically does about 150 arrivals a day when all runways are open, which is about 18% of the total South Flow arrivals. And then during the partial closure, that's actually increased. So now it's running about 300 to 350. So, and during this closure, which started May 24th, we've had 29 total complaints from residents of Coppell from about 8 households, 27 of which were related to the closure. Most of those came from one household. So most folks, when they find out that it's a runway closure, and they understand it's not a permanent situation, then that was really the root of their question. So when they get that question answered, then they don't continue to call. But certainly folks are welcome to call as they feel they would like to. So with the full closure, which take effect August 3rd, we'll see basically what we're seeing now. But while 17 Center has been able to take some arrivals, it will be fully closed, so those arrivals will shift to other runways. FAA expects to send about half of those to the west side, and then the other half would go to 17 left. So we do expect 17 left operations to increase with the full closure, probably to 400 flights a day or so once that full closure takes effect. And then same thing in North Flow, the shifting of operations. North Flow really doesn't affect Coppell as much. And as we move into the fall months, we get more North Flow. Right now in the summer, we've had a lot of South Flow, which has been good because they've been able to make a lot of progress on the construction. And as a final thing, we did look at the noise effects from this runway closure, and it's one of our responsibilities under FAA rules to see if there's a significant impact. We found there was not, except in the area where the box is over some apartments in Irving. All those tenants were notified. But in Coppell, the increase occurred over compatible land use, thanks to the city's good planning. So no homes were significantly impacted during this partial closure. And we'll wrap up with kind of a final slide. And again, we just really appreciate the partnership we have with the city of Coppell, and working with you has been a good partnership and cooperation. And of course, we're available for any questions tonight and ongoing if you have any. But Chad or I can take any questions that you may have.
First, I want to thank you all for being here. Chad, thank you. I'm sorry I didn't recognize it right when I walked in the door because I walked up to her, and well, I guess you walked up here, and I said hello, and then I was talking to others, so I do apologize. But the communications that you have sent to us for us to then turn around and send out to our citizens is huge, and we appreciate that more than you know. And we do also appreciate the fact that you are so kind and considerate to those who call and ask questions. And I'm sure complaints are not always what you hear, but I'm sure there are a lot of questions.
There are. Yes.
Council, any comments or questions? Councilmember Roden.
Great. Thank you again for the information.
Absolutely.
So, and maybe you said this and I missed it, going forward, I mean, the second bullet here says the next decade of infrastructure. I assume there are other runway repairs coming in the next couple of years, and if so, how long does that whole process last?
We expect it's going to take us about 10 years to complete. For example, on this project, we're doing the runway portion in 2018, and then over the next 2 years, we'll be doing the parallel taxiway next to the runway. So we expect it'll be after that project is completed before we move to the next runway, which we expect to be on the West Complex.
A follow-up then, the parallel taxiway construction, how much effect does that have on our community?
That should not have any effect because it won't affect arrivals and the use of 17 left for arrivals. It just affects ground movements, so it should not affect the city.
Essentially, we can tell people if we can just endure this, we get a couple of years break.
Correct.
And then it starts again. Just like we talk about road construction here.
Just a quick comment. Again, I want to reiterate what the mayor said with the communication, because I live on the west side of town, and I do get approached by the HOA folks, and they want to know what's going on. So I'm able to share that with them, and then they post it on the Facebook page, social media. So I think that really does cut down on the uncertainty and unknown. And I think once you know that, then it cuts down on the complaints. So I appreciate that, and keep it coming.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much.
Councilmember Mays.
So, Sandy, thank you for sharing, and you've kind of outlined, your plan, 10-year plan. What does the airport look like looking forward in terms of maintenance for the indefinite future after the 10-year period is over?
Well, as that initial slide showed, we have a lot of infrastructure that needs rehabilitation. So clearly the runways, but also the taxiways, the roadways, the utilities. So just that entire horizontal structure, I think, is going to take quite some time, perhaps beyond the 10 years to do all of that. But the airport continues to grow, so I'm sure there'll be additional terminals potentially at some point in time, cargo operations. And we've been developing the non-aeronautical aspects of our airport, so a lot of warehouses and such that provide some additional non-airline dependent revenue, and that will continue as well.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. Thank you very much. Do appreciate it.
Thank you so much. We also brought some fact sheets, and we left many copies with Hannah. So if you need any more, just let us know. And thank you very much.
You will be the first one we call. Thank
Okay,
you.
that's a deal.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Item 7, school security by the Coppell Police Department and Coppell Independent School District. And we have Police Chief Tristan here to lead us in this discussion. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. We have obviously a very serious issue to talk about tonight. We're here to provide you an overview of what the Coppell Police Department has been doing in conjunction with the Coppell Independent School District in regards to our school safety and security. After my comments, Dr. Shane Conkling with the Coppell ISD is here. He'll provide you some information that the school district has been presented and their school board as well. No one needs to be reminded of the situation we're in this country with regards to school safety. The active shooters that we faced in the recent years, and more specifically in the recent months. No community can no longer say, this can't happen here, or this won't happen here. Those days and that reality no longer exist. What we have learned in the past is that no one and no place is immune from these types of events. movie theaters, places of employment, grocery stores, restaurants, outdoor venues, churches, schools, anywhere people congregate is a potential target. We live in a country with great liberties and a lot of freedoms. That includes carrying of weapons and possession of weapons. We also have a problem of mental illness in our country. It's been estimated that 1 in 5 adults suffer from some form of mental illness. Adults. We don't have the figures for juveniles and teenagers. I tell you all of this because this is the challenge that police departments all around this country face. This is where we're at today, and there are absolutely no easy answers. This website called everytown.org tracks these shootings throughout this country that are reported, not just schools, but colleges and even some places of employment. Specifically with regards to shootings, they have recorded that there have been 41 school shootings since January of 2018. 41. 21 of those, no one was hurt, no one was injured. It was a gun that went off or somebody fired a weapon on a parking lot or somewhere in the school grounds. We have not heard of a lot of these shootings. The ones that we have heard and the ones that we're very familiar of are some of these. January 22nd, 2018, Italy, Texas. 15-year-old young lady was shot by a student that brought a handgun to school. February 14th, 2018, Parkland, Florida, 17 killed. May 18th, 2018, Santa Fe, Texas, 10 killed. And then June 1st, at the end of the school year, McKinney, Texas, where one student brought a weapon and committed suicide in the high school. What the Coppell Police Department does is each time each one of these incidents happen, these major incidents happen, we research, we learn, we study, we try to find out as much information as we can about each and every one of these situations. What happened? How did it happen? How did they enter? Who was the shooter? Where did the shooter get the weapons? And we do that in order to learn and get better at protecting our own schools. What are we doing different? What can we do different? How can we use this information to better prepare ourselves for this type of situation? Then further, after each one of these incidents, we meet with the superintendent and his staff. I meet personally with him and my key members of my team with key members of his team to talk about what are we doing in our schools? Why can we do this better? What can we learn from this? Again, to have that dialogue constantly going. In recent weeks, you've seen newspaper articles and news media about cities and some of the things they're doing. South Lake had an article, and Frisco had an article, and a lot of cities are doing similar things. I will tell you that I have contacted personally the police chiefs of each of these cities, and they are doing nothing that we aren't already doing or have already begun to do in the past few years. We're on the same track. We're learning from each other. We study the best practices. We look at what's best for our schools, and we work in cooperation with our schools. So I'll tell you that only to know that we're on top of this. We're working as best we can and working with each other, and they have done nothing that we haven't already done. Some of the things that we're doing, they're starting to do. A few examples of what we've done in this past year. In early 2017, we started to evaluate how we use our patrol rifles. Our patrol rifles are AR-15 high-capacity magazine weapons that Coppell police officers train, qualify, show proficiency with these weapons. Those weapons are issued to those officers, and they're in each of the squad cars of our patrol officers. Well, they were also issued to school resource officers. The problem is that if there's a shooting in the school, an active shooter in the school, that school resource officer would have to run out of the school, go into the parking lot, grab that rifle from the squad car, and run back into the school, which makes no sense. It's not practical. In fact, one of my SROs said, I don't want to be the guy in the paper running out of the school trying to get my rifle. Sends the bad picture. They're going to engage. So in April of 2017, we approached the Coppell Independent School District, the school board. We had a meeting with them, and we asked them to install gun safes in the schools for the school resource officers' offices. By the beginning of the school year 2017, every school resource officer had their weapon in the school in the gun safe. What that weapon does is allow us to engage a threat a lot quicker with a lot more accuracy. Those weapons can be used at 50 yards and beyond. A handgun, you've got to be really close for accuracy. So it allows us in an event of an active shooter to respond quickly, to engage the threat quickly, and eliminate the threat quickly, thereby eliminating injury and death to any of the bystanders. We're also asking for a new school resource officer in our budget for the 9th grade center. We currently have a school resource officer there that is the middle school. But when it changes into a 9th grade center, that's going to pose some challenges. That school, as it is, poses some challenges for us. And I'll get into that in a minute. This will increase our school resource officers from 6 to 7. From 2010 through today, student population for Coppell ISD has increased by over 23%. In the last 15 years, we've only added one additional school resource officer. And that was in budget year 2013-14, where we added a second for Coppell High School because it was so big as well. So there's 2 school resource officers at Coppell High School. The 9th grade center is unlike any other school facility that we have. It's large, it's spread out, it is in the corporate side of town, away from the rest of the city, so it takes time to respond if an officer needs assistance. Our plan is to put those officers throughout that school and office them in different parts of that school. We're also talking about 9th graders. I believe the school population will be about the same, but we're not talking about 6th, 7th, and 8th graders anymore. We're talking about all 9th graders. So that has a great deal of concern to me. The situation, the location of that school concerns me as far as getting assistance to those officers as soon as possible. If you haven't seen it already, you will see the amended version of our crime control district budget where we're adding another school resource officer for that. The other reason we're adding that school resource officer is to support that team when one of those school resource officers is out of commission for an unspecified period of time. At the end of this last school year, one of our school resource officers had an unexpected leave and was out for 2 months. So I had a middle school with no school resource officer. What we had to do is take a patrol officer from his assignment and assign him to that school for a period of 2 months, which we had to make some adjustments in patrol and fill in, backfill, if you will. This will allow us for that person to fill in when we have unexpected absences like that. We started this past summer, particularly after the Santa Fe shootings, to meet with area cities, surrounding cities, police and fire agencies to coordinate and talk about our response protocols. Should something like this happen in any of our communities, it will overwhelm us. All of our resources will go to that location. So the purpose of these meetings is to coordinate response, to backfill, and compare protocols and procedures and policies so we can be better prepared for that. And then finally, we continue to meet with CISD officials and discuss these issues and how do we better prepare. In fact, we met just 2 weeks ago with Superintendent Brad Hunt and his team and me and my team to discuss this new school year. We go over suggestions, new plans, how do we respond to these things. Every police officer in the city of Coppell now has access to every school door. We have a key to every single entrance, the camera system. All of these things we continue to discuss. Within about a week or two ago, the United States Department of Justice released their threat assessment model through the United States Secret Service. It's a great model. It allows us to go through every single step to make sure we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. I've already reviewed the model, and we're doing pretty much everything. I've sent the model to Superintendent Hunt. I would like to start, they recommend starting a threat assessment team where it involves school officials, including school resource officers, to address either students, personnel, or any issue that has the potential for threatening our schools. We have a good plan. We are as prepared as we ever have been in the city. We continue to train to prepare our officers for this type of event. We continue to train with our rifles and qualify with those rifles. And we continue to investigate any reports of threats, perceived threats, or any suspicious activity, which do come through. People joke about this stuff. It's like at the airport. We don't joke about this anymore. And if we get a report of a joke, we're going to knock on your door and we're going to investigate. And if it involves violation of the law, we will make arrests. I will tell you, the good news is that we have a great relationship cooperative relationship with our school district, with our school board. We work very, very well together. We communicate constantly. We support one another. They have very good practices and protocols in place today to address these issues. The danger for any organization and any human beings is to become complacent. If nothing happens at a period of time, people tend to get lax. We cannot allow for that to happen because we never know when we have to be ready for these types of events. Dr. Shane Conkling is Director of Student and Staff Services for Coppell ISD. I can answer any questions now, or we can hear his presentation, and then we can both field questions, whatever your preference is. Okay?
All right. Mayor Hunt and council members, thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. I want to just echo what Chief said. The relationship that we have with the police department is exceptional. And just as he said, our safety and security program is fluid. It's always changing based on new research we have, best practices that we find. But what I will tell you is a lot of things that you're going to hear tonight are things that we've had in place for years or have been including in our safety program for years. However, when we do have incidents that occur, like he showed up there on the screen in Florida and in Texas, it does allow us to step back, take a quick reflection or review of what we're currently doing and seeing if there's anything else that we could do. I want to start off by saying that safety and security in our district is our top priority. We know we are a learning organization, but we also know that our kids do not learn if they don't feel safe in an environment. So that is our top priority. So the state of Texas and the Texas Education Code requires all school districts to have an emergency operation plan that covers the 4 phases of crisis management. On the screen there, you see those 4 phases. The first one is prevention or mitigation, which is really about trying to minimize an emergency from happening or to minimize risk or a crisis from occurring. The second stage is prepare or a preparedness, and that's just a continuous cycle of trying to make sure that if and when or if a situation was to occur, that everybody in our building is prepared to respond appropriately. And then the response phase is exactly what it says. It's if something happened, everybody knows their roles and their responsibilities, and you put all of your plans into action. If you see the picture down there, that really involves our standard response protocol. So our drills such as our lockout, our lockdown, our evacuate and shelter drills. In this stage, this is when we actually put those things into action. And then recovery. The recovery one is a phase that a lot of times school districts don't put a lot of time into that. But when there's trauma, there's going to be grief. And when there's trauma or a crisis or an emergency situation, our students are going to need to be able to be taken care of both socially and emotionally. And oftentimes, we forget our staff who are going through that or are taking care of our kids also need to be taken care of. So those are the 4 phases as a district that we focus on. We've got lots of things that we do in all 4 phases. I'm going to touch on just a few of these. I'm not going to go through every single one, but if you do have a question, please feel free to stop me. I can go into more depth. So one of the first things that we have is just our campus-wide behavior supports, and these are just our programs. If you've been on any of our campuses, you'll see things or you'll hear about our campuses who are Great Expectation schools or national school or state schools of character. They have programs in place that build on 3 major themes: having routines and procedures in place, having behavioral expectations in place that are communicated to our kids, and then really building a community of relationships. We believe that relationships are extremely important in Coppell ISD. That's relationships between students, but also between our students and our adults. We have campus safety audits that occur each year. The state of Texas requires each campus or facility in your district to have a comprehensive safety and security audit. Region 10 actually does that for us every 3 years. However, the district does go above and beyond, and we complete an annual safety audit on each one of our campuses. This year, we actually partnered with the Coppell PD, and they are helping us do those audits. So that's been a great relationship. We have Teen Screen, which is a screener for all of our 7th, 9th, and 11th graders. It's a quick assessment that they respond to a series of questions, and it helps us to identify if there are any mental health issues that our students are going through, or if they have any suicide ideation, and then allows us to get with those students, to get with their parents and convene or intervene and create a plan of action for them to make sure that they are safe. We do that every year in those grade levels. Of course, you've heard about Coppell ISD being a national district of character, and it's because of the great counselors we have on our campuses, and we have several comprehensive counseling programs that they work with our kids on a daily basis. Our tip lines are extremely important. We have both the Coppell ISD tip line and the Coppell PD tip line, where we receive anonymous tips. And as Chief mentioned, if we have a tip, regardless of how serious it is or minimal it is, we do a complete investigation to make sure our schools and campuses are safe. The suppressive force program is exactly the program that Chief was talking about in terms of the rifles on schools, so I won't go into that. So that is really the mitigation, all those things that we put in place to try to prevent or mitigate a crisis or an emergency from occurring. In the preparation phase, we have our emergency procedures plan, again, required by the state of Texas, and it's covering basically all the 4 phases that I'm talking about now. We have a bullying protocol. When an allegation of bullying has occurred, we do an extensive investigation to determine whether that bullying allegation is substantiated or unsubstantiated. And so that protocol goes through our assistant principals, our counselors, and our principals to make sure that our kids are taken care of and that bullying is not occurring on our campuses. Our standard response protocols, that is our drills. That is the standard drill. Most of the schools in the state of Texas are or are going to that. That was created by a gentleman who lost his daughter in a school shooting. And I believe it was Colorado, and he created a program, I Love You Guys. You might have heard of that. And that is just standard responses, drills that we drill several times throughout the year. We also have medical assistant teams in each of our campus, and these are teams that are certified to use our AED machines. So if we have a student or an adult in our building go down with a cardiac arrest, they are trained to use that device on campus. And then, of course, our relationships with our SROs and our emergency responders. In the response stage, this is really, as I said earlier, just executing the plan. It's really extremely important that everybody in our buildings and in our district understands what their role is and responsibility is during a crisis. So we train our staff and we train our students exactly what to do during these crisis situations or these emergencies. We have a great relationship with Region 10. If a crisis was to occur in Coppell, not only will all of the police departments in the area come and converge on Coppell ISD, but we also have a cadre, a team from Region 10 that will come out and help us, and they have a cadre of counselors that will come and serve our campuses for grief and trauma support. And then they also have a communications team that will come out and support our communications department, because when something like this happens, every newspaper, every TV station will be converging on the location. So they're here to help us with that also. And then it's really important during this situation or during these times that we take time to reflect and evaluate our processes and our procedures so that if it were to occur again, that we can make the necessary changes to make sure we're doing what's right and what's appropriate to keep our kids safe. So after the 3 events, as I said, all of those things were going on prior to the latest 3 events that happened in Texas. But as those happened, we took a step back and we kind of reflected on our practices. And we wanted to make sure that the first thing we did was reestablish our safety and security team as a district. and really look at what we were doing and reflect on our practices. And so as a district safety and security team, we wanted to do these 3 things. One, establish a team and meet regularly to look at the things we're doing. Secondly, we wanted to make sure that we looked at those formal security audits to identify any vulnerabilities or threats that may happen or could happen to our students, our staff, and really anybody that is on our campus or in our facilities. And then we wanted to perceive the level of safety for all of our stakeholders. We thought that was extremely important because we can't always tell everybody every safety measure that we have in place. Some of that we want to hold tight. We don't want it out in the public what all of our plans are. There's some information we want to hold close. So we convened this committee, and you'll see this committee has members from every department in our school. It has resource officers. We've included students on the committee. We also are expanding this committee. The Fire Chief Oates is going to be on the committee. We also are extending an invitation to anybody in the city that would like to be on the committee. So if anybody here has an interest, reach out to me. Our next meeting will be next week, July 31st, but we'll be meeting several times throughout the year. So we're excited about that group getting together. So the last time we met, we had some recommendations, and I'm going to go through this real quickly for the sake of time. But one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we had very few access points at our campuses. And the access points we had, we wanted to make sure that they were very secure. So we've added safety security vestibules at each of our entries on all of our campuses. We just finished the vestibule at Coppell High School. The only campus that we're still working on is Victory Place, our DAP campus, and our academy, our campus that allows students with a non-traditional education to go and graduate. So we're looking at that. We wanted to also make sure that all of our classroom doors lock. That's extremely important. Right now, all of our doors lock from the outside, which is not probably where you want to be if an active shooter was in the building. So we do have an expectation that all of our doors are locked, but we have magnets that are stopping them from shut, so that way if anything occurs, they just pull the magnet out and they shut the door at this time. We are adding over 800 cameras to our district facilities, which is extremely important. It allows us more visibility on our campuses. That was just approved last night at the board meeting. And then something that's extremely important is making sure that we have all of our standard response protocol posters, and evacuation maps are posted in every single classroom. We found that was not the case as teachers leave and people move classrooms and you build new buildings. Sometimes those are forgotten. So we did a needs assessment there and made sure all of those classrooms were equipped with those. We are numbering all of our exterior doors. Actually, our maintenance department right now is cutting letters or numbers for all of our doors. When you have a campus like Coppell High School that has 67 different entry points, doors, and you are calling for emergency responders, it would be nice to tell them we are in the south building near door 13, and they know exactly where to go. And so that's why we're doing that. We're increasing the number of dog visits, the drug dog visits on our campuses and our secondary levels. The state of Texas also requires you to have 2 lockdown drills a year, only 2. Our district this year has, well, in the past, actually it's been several years now, Brad, I think that we've had at least 4 drills a year, and this year we're going to go to 5. So we exceed those expectations. I already talked a little bit about safety and security audits and the safety and security team, so I'll skip that. One thing that's extremely important, Chief mentioned mental health, and 1 in 5 adults and 1 in 4 children are suffering from some type of mental health. And so there's a mental health first aid training that is available. So right now we are looking at the option of sending our counselors, a couple of our counselors, to become certified mental health trainers so they can come back and train our teachers on what to look for, so that way we can get a hold of those kids early and intervene and get them the help that they need. We've also some recommendations out of that committee was to hire a full-time health services coordinator, which we had a lead nurse, but we've reclassified her and taken her off the campus so she can support our nurses. We've also added a safety and security coordinator that will be starting in January for us. That will kind of, and what I've learned over the course of the last 4 or 5 months, taking safety and security over, that it is a full-time job. And so we're extremely excited about adding that position. We've added additional safety and security training staff. Actually, today we trained all of our administrators on CRAES, which is the civilian response for active shooter events. And we are going to push that training out to all of our campuses and our secondary students in the fall. So they'll have that additional training also. And then we've purchased crisis incident management software, which is an extremely important piece to our safety and security plan, because it's going to allow us to, it's a web-based platform. It'll allow us to host all of our emergency operation plans, our flip charts, our student attendance, so we know if there's a lockdown and maybe 2 kids left my classroom and I can't account for them, but maybe Mr. Hunt picked them up and they're in his office, he'll have a device and he can know where every kid is out in the building that they've been accounted for. So that's a great tool that we're adding to our program. I want to end with just a couple of things that we've occurred over just the last couple weeks. I was able to attend the TASA conference, and Chief mentioned that we are kind of ahead of the curve, or we are either the head of the curve or we're doing what other districts are doing. And I can tell you, just from listening to other school districts down there for 2 days, Coppell ISD is in a great place, because many of the things they were saying that need to happen on their campuses or in their districts, Coppell ISD was already doing. And so I was really proud of that. But there were 4 major things that came out. One, they wanted to standardize their drill procedures and add additional drills, which we've already done and have been doing. Increasing the number of cameras, which we've already done. Decrease the access points to 1 or 2 on campus, which is something we've already done. Increasing mental health training for all of our staff, we're looking at that. And then increasing the number of district crisis counselors and campus guidance counselors on campus. We were able to add this year a coordinator, a crisis coordinator, and a crisis counselor in the district that are able to work solely with our students. And so we're excited about that. And then in August, on the 8th, Wednesday, August 8th at 6 o'clock p.m., we're going to host a Facebook forum about school safety. And so Mr. Hunt will give a brief overview of what our safety and security program look like, but then we'll also be taking questions from our community members on Facebook, just to make sure that they're aware of what we're doing. And then offer just another way for them to ask questions and get input and be a part of that decision-making process. And so Amanda Simpson, our Director of Communications, will be moderating that discussion, but Mr. Hunt will be on Facebook. So jump on Facebook August 8th at 6 o'clock. Make sure you ask him some really tough questions. No, he's going to do a great job. So we're really, really excited about that. I want to end with this quote. It's something that I shared with our administrators today, and I think it's important. And it says, "What we prepare for today may save lives tomorrow." And I said, everything we do with safety and security is kind of like life insurance. We hope we never have to use it, but if we do, it's there and we have it. And so just like any program that we have, it's only as good as the people behind it. So we're going to continue to build the capacity of our staff, our students, because they play a big role. Our mantra is that every person in the building, every person in our community is responsible for school safety. We all have a voice and we all have a role in that. So that is our presentation, and I'll take questions. And Chief, if you want to come up and help me out here.
Thank you very much. Questions, comments? Councilmember Yealing.
Thank you, Mayor. Couple questions. So under the prevention category, you talk about building the relationships with the students, and what are some specific programs that you do to accomplish that?
Well, one of the first things that we do is we try to we tell all of our principals that we try to assign every student an adult, or we have every adult pick a student that they try to go the extra mile to create a relationship with that student. One of the campaigns that we're really going to push this year is if you see something or hear something that might be out of the ordinary, that you say something. Well, that can't happen if we don't have adults in our buildings with good relationships with kids, because they won't feel comfortable going and saying something. And if you look at the statistics, as he said, there's a lot of possible school shootings that could have occurred but that were stopped because a kid reported it to an adult. And so that's the first thing, is making sure all of our kids have mentors, having our teachers get to know our kids and their interests outside of schools, just having conversations with them about other things than just academics. That's a way that we always endorse building a positive relationship. So It happens differently with each kid because each kid is different and each kid responds differently to an adult, but we talk a lot about relationships.
Okay. Two other questions, and either can answer this, I guess. On item number 17, you talked about the SRO over on the south side of the town. Could you kind of educate the public a little bit about that process and what's going on over at the new
Yes, we
middle
are
school?
extremely excited that as a district, we've been able to work with Dallas County, and we are hiring 2 student school resource deputies, and they will be covering West Middle School and Lee Elementary. But we know that that's also going to take a strong relationship between that entity and Coppell PD, which I think that's going to be a really good relationship, but they're going to provide us coverage on the southern side of the district.
Okay. And Chief, could you...
Yeah, just to add to that, we've been in contact, worked closely with Dallas County Sheriff's Department already. This is something new for them as well. We've shared with them all of our policies and procedures regarding the school resource officers. We've invited them to work with our team. We've invited them to the state TASRO conference, the Texas Association of School Resource Officers. So they're ready and geared up, and we've invited them to help them in any way we can.
And then the last question is, Chief, on the we talked about the amended budget for the additional SRO officer. Just to go back to that specific incident where you lost somebody for 2 months because they're out, the SRO does require specific training. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Once we select this school resource officer, and we've got the posting out now, they'll have to go to these trainings and be a part of that. And it's about building relationships with the schools as well. We had to put someone in that school. I felt it was important to put someone in that school. He did a great job for those 2 months, but it's great to have somebody that's connected with that school district and those principals and staff, and to get to know them. Yes, ma'am.
Well, in having that extra person, not only doesn't take someone away from patrol, but also doesn't put somebody in that position who's not trained and puts us in a vulnerability if there is a situation. So
yeah, their basic responsibility is safety at that point, as opposed to getting to know the school, because they won't be there that long. So that's the plan, and all of our school resource officers are cross-trained. They train together. They all know each other's schools. They know each other's principals. They meet together constantly, and that's the purpose of this. Yes, ma'am.
thank you very much.
And I'd just like to add on that the SROs, they're not they are a separate entity because they're hired by the PD department, but they're a part of the team on that campus. And I've been a building principal with SROs, and they are just as much as part of our team as an educator is, just because of the relationship. And the kids love them and get to know them as a mentor, as a teacher. So very important on our campuses. One thing I didn't mention that wasn't in here, but I do want to mention it because I want our police officers to know this, but I'm excited to announce that we're creating a program at all of our campuses that any police officer or fireman who come to our campus during lunch or breakfast will get free lunch or breakfast. We want a presence on our campus of our emergency responders, our law enforcement, and our police force. And if any of the members come, we can get you all lunch and breakfast.
Wait, you mean free cafeteria food?
Free cafeteria food. So it's actually a lot better than probably when you and I were in school. It is actually a lot better. So we think that will do a couple things. One, it gets those individuals on our campus. It allows them to see the layout of our building in case they ever need to come to our building. But also, again, it allows them to build positive relationships with the administrative staff there, and the kids get to see them. And we want our kids to look at our police officers as positive role models in our community. So we're excited about that program. We hope that the police department and our fire department take advantage of it. I promise the food is a lot better than it was 20 years ago when I was in school. So.
Roden.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the presentation. This always makes me thankful for the cooperation we have in our city between the city and the school district, which I know isn't always the case, so thank you. Question deals with metal detectors. Obviously, that's been in the press a lot. I realize it's more than just the equipment. There's got to be some manpower issues. What have we done collectively to look into that, and what are thoughts?
Well, the first thing, again, we met as a safety and security committee and made recommendations, and that did come up. And at that time, the committee didn't feel like we wanted to move forward with metal detectors, but I will tell you it's still on the table and it's still up for discussion. Outside the cost, we have done a little bit of research, and when I was at the TASA conference, Mike, executive director of Safe Havens International, which is the leading organization for campus school safety, he gave some statistics, and he said for an average district, it's going to cost you about $500,000 for the metal detectors. But to staff those metal detectors, you're looking at anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million, because you got to think every unit you have, you're going to have one person manning that, waving people through. You need somebody with a wand in case you get a hit. But then if you have a backpack that might have something, and then you need a table that someone else is manning, so there's a lot of personnel things. Not to say that the cost would prohibit us from moving in that direction, but you got to think about all those things. And then the safety issues of getting 2,600 kids through there. Where are they going to be? They're going to be outside in the open, and maybe a weather hazard or just open. So it's a lot of logistics, so we weren't ready as a committee to kind of move forward with that recommendation at that time. We felt it needed a little bit more study on our part to do that, and then a little bit more discussions with our PD.
If I might add, we did discuss that on July the 9th, and as Dr. Conkling said, it's not out. We've not ruled them out. There are pros and cons with all of those. And I think that the answer, in my opinion, is today everyone has an opinion, and experts have come out of the woodwork. If you say one thing, somebody will say, no, that's not going to work. It's not one single thing that's going to make this thing work. It's going to be a combination of efforts, which he was very comprehensive about talking about that. There's good and bad with metal detectors. It takes, will it work? Absolutely. But what's the cost as far as resources, the strategy, getting students in and out? I've heard comments of, well, for every metal detector, you need to have someone there, an armed police officer there, because if somebody has a weapon, how are you going to handle that? There's all kinds of perceptions and misconceptions with that. I think we need to continue to evaluate that and see if that's productive for our situation. But not one single thing is going to solve this entire issue.
Councilmember Mays.
So thank you, Chief. I'm not sure I'm going to ask a question I'm not sure there's a good answer for. So one of the things that keeps me awake at night, though, concerning, security and school safety is how do you identify the individuals that may be a threat, and specifically when it comes to the state of mind or mental health. So has there been any movement to be able to identify those individuals, especially the juveniles, and still maintain their privacy and all that big conundrum of debate? Where do we stand on that?
Well, unfortunately, I think the profiling of the school shooter is very hard to profile them. What we can say is most of them happen to be male. But outside of that, I'm not sure that there is a really strong profile. We do have a couple tools that we try to at least identify whether students are experiencing some type of mental health illness through our teen screen. We do have what we call a threat assessment, so probably I haven't had the opportunity to view that yet, but our threat assessment is when a kid makes a comment about harming themselves or harming others, then there's a protocol that we initiate in the district. And again, it starts with working with the parent, any outside resources that we have. Sometimes the PD, and the PD has been great. There has been incidents where we get something at 11 or 12 o'clock at night on a tip line, and I know that they're at the house at 2 o'clock in the morning because I get a call. So that's kind of where we're at with that, but I'm not sure that there's something that really is given us to say, yeah, this kid might be a potential. There are some characteristics that we look for. Kids that are loners, that, they stay away from people, they make certain comments about events that they want to do at school, but I don't know, Chief, if there's really a profile.
No, there really isn't, and that's what this model talks about, putting together a threat assessment team, which is very similar to the team that you mentioned. We get reports, tips, social media tips of somebody that says something, and it's typically a student or a young man or a young woman that's struggling with emotional issues. And there's not one set criteria that will identify this particular person. But we have been very, very good at staying on top of those types of reports. And as Dr. Conkling said, we've gotten them at 11, 12, midnight, 1 in the morning, and we go to those houses and we knock on the doors and we talk to parents. This is a real problem in our community. We're dealing with it. We're doing the best we can. But I think one thing to keep in mind, it's not always students in these types of situations. We've had situations throughout this country where an ex-wife, an ex-husband, a jealous boyfriend will go to the school to do whatever to that teacher, whatever relationship they have, and then the violence just spills over to whoever the bystanders are. So it's a huge gamut of things that keep me awake at night and how we're going to respond to this.
Thank you very, very much. We really appreciate this information, and I know it's a constant in our community that people are asking questions, and it's a great way for us to be able to say we know that our police department and our school district are and working and doing everything they can, and we appreciate the information. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 8 is citizens' appearance, and we have one person who has signed up to speak. We have Miss Lydia. Please come forward. State your name and address for the record.
I'm Lydia Goulas, and I live at 905 Crestview Drive in Coppell.
And you have 2 minutes.
I want to make some comments concerning the proposed DART cotton rail that will be running behind my home on Crestview. If you watched the TexRail video that I emailed to y'all yesterday, you know that the noise level of the proposed DART rail vehicle is much higher than DART's comparison to a neighbor's lawnmower. DART's comparison is based on the vehicle traveling at 50 miles per hour, but the rail behind Crestview will be traveling at 79 miles per hour. Even so, can you imagine your neighbor mowing his lawn every 20 minutes all day, beginning at 5:15 and going to midnight every 20 minutes? That is the proposed schedule of the rail behind Crestview. Based on the noise impact criteria in the DART study, the increased noise exposure at Crestview is at or near the moderate impact level. At that level, DART says they will determine noise mitigation on a case-by-case basis under the following circumstances. Is the property within a cluster of residences? Yes. Is the noise level increase near the moderate level? Yes. Is there significant community input regarding noise concerns? Yes. Nearly 100 neighbors have provided DART with input regarding noise concerns. Unfortunately, DART has denied our request to consider a sound wall along Crestview. Therefore, I'm asking the council to consider the following. Perform an independent study to obtain accurate data at Crestview. Ask DART to consider the Crestview area on an individual basis. And if the city fails in its efforts to negotiate with DART for sound mitigation, budget the necessary funds to provide adequate mitigation along the Crestview border. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No one else has signed up to speak, so we will go to item 9, the consent agenda. The consent agenda items are routine in nature and are generally enacted in one motion. These items have been previously approved through budget or past council action. Any item may be pulled and considered separately. Full descriptions have been rotating on the screens. We have items A, D, and E today. We're going to pull, well, let's do this. Why don't, if it's okay with everybody, have Mindy Hurley come up and, I was going to miss, what's her name? Mindy Hurley, give us information on B and C, since we have not discussed those here in this room.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm excited to welcome tonight Peak Nano Optics to Coppell as one of our newest corporate citizens. I'm not going to try to really explain what the company does, but I'm going to tell you that they are a nanotechnology company that develops revolutionary optics for the commercial and defense industries. So they will use state-of-the-art robotics at this facility in order to create product. That's a great way to say that. So they are looking to lease 211,100 square feet at 220 North Freeport Parkway. They are signing a 10-year lease, and this facility will serve as their corporate headquarters as well as their main manufacturing facility. At full operation, they'll have 125 employees, and they'll have a capital investment of over $60 million. So they expect full operation to be within the first 5 years. So that's an exciting opportunity. We're excited to welcome them. These two incentive agreements for BNC, the first one is an economic development incentive agreement that grants a one-time cash grant of $1,000 per employee with an annual salary of $75,000 or greater, and that is capped at 125 employees. And then the tax abatement agreement is for a 75% abatement for 10 years on the business personal property for Peak Nano Optics, and it this facility falls within Reinvestment Zone 91, which was created by ordinance in May of 2014, and it was created after a public hearing was held. So it's met all the conditions required by state law. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Maybe. I'm not sure I can answer them about the company, but we do have Brian Trueblood here from Peak Nano Optics. So if there's any real technical questions, I'm sure he can come up and answer them for you.
To try, is that what you said? We have had this discussion prior, but it had not come before the council as a whole in this room, so I wanted to make sure that we discussed it. Were there any comments or discussion from council? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have consent agenda items A through E. I will accept a motion. Councilmember Mays.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve consent agenda items 9A through 9E.
Second by Councilmember Hill. All in favor?
Long, Mays, Roden, Yingling, Matthew Hill. None opposed. Motion carries.
Item 10, we'll have Ms. Miller here to help us with agenda items 10 and 11. Consider approval of an ordinance authorizing the issuance of the combination tax and limited surplus revenue certificates of obligation in a maximum amount of $46,165,000 for street projects, public safety facilities, for fire department, expansion of the city-owned cemetery, a performing arts center, and water and sewer projects, and authorizing the mayor to sign.
Mayor and Council, this item is being brought forward for your approval for the issuance of these certificates of obligation. The certificates are being issued for the following projects. The tax-supported projects are the fire station, the cemetery expansion, and asphalt overlays. CRDC-supported debt is going to be for the Arts Center, and then the water and sewer-supported debt will be for the advanced meter project, Water Tower number 1, we have an inflow infiltration project, and then a Village Parkway pump station generator. We have Chris Settle with our bond counsel of McCall, Parkerson, Horton here to answer any questions you may have. And then Jason Hughes with Hilltop Securities is going to give you a rundown of the auction that we had this morning on the bond sale.
Welcome, and please state your name and address for the record.
Jason Hughes, 1201 Main, Dallas. Mayor and Council, good evening. It's good to be with you again tonight. And as Ms. Miller said, I do have a summary of the certificates of obligation sale that we undertook this morning. And if you'll turn with me the very first page, beg your pardon, right after the cover, is where I'm going to spend the majority of my time. And what we did is we actually went out today and we invited any qualified investment bank to submit a bid for these certificates. And essentially what we told them is at 10 o'clock we'll start receiving those bids. One of the interesting things about the process in which we sold the certificates today that's a little bit different is we allowed banks to submit a bid. Whenever they submitted it, they were told you're in first place, you're in second place, you're in third place, whatever place you're in. And so, for instance, if you're in second place, you were given a 2-minute window to improve your bid and actually become the best bid. It is an arm's length transaction in the sense that the second place, the third place, et cetera, didn't know what the best bid was, right? So all they knew is, well, if we keep improving our bid, potentially we can win these. With the idea being that we're trying to drive down the cost of capital to as low as possible for the city and ultimately for the citizens. So as you can see there, again, it was sold through a competitive auction process. We had 4 bidders, and they provided a total of 7 different bids. So again, 4 bidders, 7 different bids. What you will notice, though, is Morgan Stanley, who was the winner, provided the best bid, and that was never beaten. So they never had to improve their bid. So as you can see there, we are selling 20-year debt, or debt with final maturity of 20 years, and that bid TIC was a 3.19% rounded. So again, 20 years, 3.19%. And that is a fixed rate for the life of the certificates of obligation. As you can see there down below, final par amount of $42.405 million. And the reason that is there was a premium that was bid on the certificates. A portion of that premium will be used to pay the cost of issuance. The remaining balance of that is what is used to make up the difference and fund, as you can see there, the full $45.9 million that will be coming to the city in construction proceeds. So as you can see there, I did break it out. Ms. Miller went through water meters, cemetery streets, so on and so forth. As I said, we did have a 20-year total maturity for 5 of the 6 purposes. The water meters, those are a little bit shorter term asset, and therefore we finance them over a shorter term. So those are financed on a 15-year term. So we were able to take that and again finance that over 15 years as opposed to the 20 years. The certificates are callable February 1st to 2028. All that simply means is the city retains the flexibility to either refinance those in the future, much like you'd refinance your home mortgage, or to pay those certificates off early and avoid interest costs in the future. So again, that's simply a flexibility or an item that allows flexibility for City Council. One of the things, as you see there at the very bottom, as far as the ratings, you enjoy AAA credit ratings from both Moody's and S&P. So that is the highest credit rating that you can have. Obviously, the highest or the higher your credit rating, the lower your interest rate. So this is one of the things that I often tell my clients, as you build that rating up and as you get to the pinnacle, that's something that doesn't just take into account what you're doing right now. It takes into account what you've done in the past. It also takes into account what the rating agencies feel you will be doing in the future. You've built up a lot of credibility with both Moody's and S&P. That, again, is reflected in those AAA credit ratings. So that is certainly something that whenever we go to market the city's debt, that is taken into account. Again, as I said, a 3.19% interest rate was the final financing cost, and that is certainly reflective of the city's AAA credit ratings. Just very briefly, as you see, I have 3 tabs in here. Behind tab A, this just shows where interest rates are right now. And as you can see, what's interesting about this, rates have gone up a little over the past couple of years. We're still, however, over the last 20 years, in the lowest 25% of rates historically during that period. A very long-winded way and cumbersome way of saying we're still in a very low interest rate environment. Behind tab B, I've included the numbers here. Again, $42,405,000 is what we're asking your approval for. Assuming that these are approved tonight, Then we'll be closing them in roughly a month, and that's when council will have funds in the bank for those project proceeds. Behind tab B, again, are the full S&P and Moody's rating reports, and so I would encourage you to read those at your convenience. This again goes through and talks about how the rating agencies look at you and view you. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Again, Chris Settle with McCall, Parkhurst, and Horton is here if you have any legal questions. With that, I would recommend approval.
Questions, comments? Congratulations, this is awesome. And when you beat your own projections, that's even more awesome, because that says Coppell is awesome, I guess. Councilmember Mays.
Able to join the online, that must have been some kind of popcorn party. How many of these have you done online like that before?
So it is a relatively new platform. I personally, this is the third one I've done. My firm that I know of, we've done probably close to about 10.
And do you see a significant difference in interest rates that are generated as a result between doing it online or the old-fashioned way?
I think that we have seen more demand, and I think the idea is that there is the lowest bid put in. Let me take a step back. How we have traditionally sold debt in the past is we would just do a competitive sale, and we would take one bid. Whoever provided the one bid at that one moment won, and there was not a chance for another bank to basically say, oh, well, we're second place, let's improve our bid. It just so happened that, again, Morgan Stanley, who won these certificates, provided the best bid at the outset. But I think there is, and kind of our theory has been, that allows, again, for the absolute lowest cost of capital.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. Councilmember Mays.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 10, to adopt an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of the City of Coppell, Texas, combination tax and limited surplus revenue certificates of obligation, Series 2018, and approving all other matters related thereto.
Is there a second? Councilmember Yingling. Any other comments or questions? All in favor?
Long, Mays, Roden, Yingling, Matthew Hill. None opposed. Motion carries.
Very much.
Mayor, Council, thank you.
Thank you. Now, item 11, consider approval of a resolution approving and authorizing the execution and delivery of the project agreement with the Coppell Recreation Development Corporation, approving the expenditures of the funds by the corporation in connection herewith, and containing other provisions here related hereto, and authorizing the mayor to sign.
Mayor and Council, this item is for your approval of the project agreement with the Coppell Recreation Development Corporation, in which they have pledged their sales tax collections for use of payment of the debt on the bonds that are associated with the Arts Center. This agreement was approved by the CRDC on June 13, 2018, and I'm requesting the approval of this agreement.
Any questions? Hearing none. Councilmember Yingling.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt a resolution approving and authorizing the execution and delivery of a project agreement with the Coppell Recreation Development Corporation.
Second by Councilmember Long. Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Long. All in favor?
Long, Mays, Roden, Yingling, Matthew Hill. None opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 12, City Manager's Report. Project updates and future agendas.
Mayor and Council, there are a couple of meetings coming up. First, the 2040 workshops begin August the 14th, so you'll be seeing social media, press releases, and so forth related to those workshops. We have a budget work session scheduled for next Monday evening, July 30th, in which the information from tonight And tomorrow, with the certified values coming in from Dallas Appraisal District, Jennifer will be working diligently on that between now and Monday so that we can give you a good update and presentation related to the tax rate, debt service, and maintenance and operations. The fifth Tuesday, which is Tuesday night, July 31st, we will be having a council work session. Right now, the two primary topics are going to be the DART Cotton Belt line and technology and cybersecurity. And then the last thing I'd like to report to you is that we are in the midst of a traffic analysis at the Sandy Lake and Winding Hollow intersection. Traffic counts are being done, so if you happen to drive by there and see the black line, if you will, or the black hose, that's what's going on with the traffic counts at that intersection. So we'll be being able to give you a report soon on that intersection. With that, Mayor, that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions for the city manager? The next item, item 13, is mayor and council reports. July is National Parks Month, Parks and Recreation Month, and we are celebrating with events, or have been celebrating with events all month long. Bring your blankets and chairs and come out to Andy Brown Park East and enjoy the free showing of the Lego Ninjago movie this Friday, July 27th from 8 to 10. Coppell Taekwondo Academy will demonstrate their ninja skills before the movie starts. Complimentary popcorn will be provided by the Parks and Recs Department. Food trucks will be available. We have the Dapper Donut, Kona Ice, and Persona Pizzeria. Yes, for all of the kids who are going to be watching the Lego movie. Lots of sugar. Any other reports from council on items in the community? Item 14, council and committee reports. Councilmember Hill, the CFB ISD and LS ISD.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's start off with Carrollton Farmers Branch ISD. If you remember my last update, Dr. Burns had just announced his retirement. A couple weeks ago on July 9th, Dr. John Chapman started his role as the new superintendent. He's joining CFB from NS ISD, where he was superintendent for the past 4 years. CFB ISD achieved a 94.3 graduation rate for 2017-2018, which is the highest in district history. At Polk Middle School, their STEM team won first place in the Technology Student Association's annual teams competition. And last but not least, school begins on August 20th. And wow, yes, won't be long, less than a month. Louisville ISD. Did you know that Louisville ISD has schools open for free breakfast and lunch to any child age 18 or under for this summer? There's no eligibility or qualification requirement, and any child is welcome. Children don't have to be students at LISD to receive a free meal. Check summerfood.org for locations and times. This summer, hundreds of Louisville ISD students had an opportunity to use and develop their creativity and problem-solving skills during the week-long camp called Camp Invention. Camp Invention encourages STEM learning through hands-on activities. And this program is sponsored by the National Inventors Hall of Fame. And last but not least, first day of school there is August the 15th. Fast approaching.
That's faster.
Thank you, Mayor.
Wow. CISD starts that day too?
The 15th, that's what I understand.
Councilmember Hinojosa Flores is not here, but we just got a really nice report from the Coppell School District, but they are starting on the 15th as well. Wow. Coppell Seniors, we have council members Roden and Yingling. Councilmember Yingling.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I will tell you that I just looked at the calendar for the July and the August Senior Center weekly ongoings. And when I looked at July, there's only Monday through Saturday, they're closed on Sunday, there's only 4 days that there's not a scheduled event. And in August, there's only 3 days that there's not a schedule. So lucky for you all, I'm not going to read every event that's out there, but I am going to highlight a few for you. So, tomorrow is the potluck and birthday luncheon at 11:30, and the theme is Eat Like a Kid But Better. So, as always with the potluck, we ask that people bring a dish to share. And kind of like a gourmet mac and cheese is what they're saying, kick it up a notch. So, and after the luncheon, you'll enjoy some classic comedy on the big screen with the likes of Lucille Ball, Carol Burnett, and Red Skelton, and I know who those people are. Anyways, the ice cream social, it will be on August 10th at 11:30, and registration's required. Breakfast bingos on August 17th at 9:15. Registration is required 1 week before. August 21st is National Senior Citizens Day, which will be having something for the seniors at the center. And then September is National Senior Center Month, and they'll be celebrating the entire month with different activities and events. And they just began having indoor pickleball, which is a big hit.
It's fun.
And Mayor, tell us what that is, would you? I don't know what pickleball is. I've heard of it, but I don't know what it is.
Pickleball is you use a racket that's about it's hard like a ping pong paddle.
Okay.
And you use a wiffle ball.
Okay.
And it's on a court that is smaller than like maybe half of a tennis court. So you have to do quick movement, but you don't travel very far.
Okay.
And when you play in pairs, it's really fun.
Is this indoor?
You can do indoor and outdoor.
Okay. I hope we're doing it indoor these days with the 109 degrees.
I don't know. If they're doing it at the
Anyways,
senior
I guess
center,
we'll have,
I think it's probably indoor.
I'm hoping. Anyways, and then currently they're working on upgrades for this center, including parking lot and renovations of the front office. So there's a lot going on over at the senior center. So check it out. It's a great deal for, let's see, annual membership's $10 for citizens. Well, were you going to jump in there?
$10, you can't beat it.
You can't beat it. So, anyways, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Any public service announcements? The only thing, this time of year is a little lighter than most, but if you like to play golf and you like to support our police department, the National Night Out Golf Tournament is August 17th. I'm sure it's on the website somewhere or at the police department site, I'm sure.
I think I misspoke about, I don't think, is the senior center closed on Sundays? They have no events on here, so I just want to make sure I don't
I think they're usually closed on Sundays.
Okay. They're not. Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
We had to ask the true senior.
Yeah.
Don't go there. We are all senior citizens
All right.
in
Yes,
one
we
form
are.
or fashion.
I just want to make sure that I was correct on that. Thank you.
Okay. Any other things for public service announcements? We do have one item from executive session. Councilmember Roden.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to move to accept the offer and approve the acquisition of 1.4 acres north of Creekview and east of Freeport, and authorize the city manager to sign the purchase and sale agreement, and authorize the mayor to sign the conveyance document on behalf of the city for the construction of a fire station.
Thank you. Second by Councilmember Mays. All in favor?
Long, Mays, Roden, Yingling, Matthew Hill. None opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. And we have no other business to come before us. So the time is 9:07. We are adjourned.